Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. Diego Lopes gets it done versus Gavin Tucker last night in 1:38 into the first round via an impressive armbar. So in today's video, we're going to be analyzing the very intriguing, fun prospect that is Diego Lopes in the 145 division, and we're going to be answering the question, what is Diego Lopes' future and potential in the UFC? So after last night, Diego Lopes got his first UFC win, but this is not why. He has a significant amount of hype. All of his hype really came from a few months ago when he stepped up on short replacement against Movsar Evloev, one of the best young prospects, undefeated prospects in the entire UFC. Not only did he come out and arguably won the first round, as he did on the judges' scorecards, 2 of them, but he went out and gave Movsar Evloev his toughest fight to date. He landed 37 significant strikes in this fight. He was extremely efficient doing so, landing over 50% on his strikes. Also, he officially threw up 4 submission attempts in this fight, and all 4 of them were extremely close at some point. In fact, if you watch that fight, you would kind of disagree with the stats. It seems as though he was throwing up 10 submissions in that fight. If someone ever tells you jiu-jitsu is boring, tell him to watch Diego Lopes. He genuinely is one of the most entertaining jiu-jitsu guys I have ever seen in the sport of MMA. And that Movsar Evloev fight really is a reflection of how Diego Lopes fights. He's surprisingly offensively sound on the feet. Even though he throws these huge winging hooks, he does love those lead hooks and those rear hand hooks. Not only that, but he does have a really nice straight hand as well, and he does land it with very nice efficiency. Not only this, but of course his offensive jiu-jitsu and his offensive grappling is absolutely incredible. He's going to throw up submissions from any point in the fight, but how this fight also reflects Diego Lopes' career is with his losses as well. So he's 22-6, and I tried to watch as many of Diego Lopes' wins and losses leading up to this video, and guys, in every single Diego Lopes loss I saw that I watched, he was on his back the entire time. It really is a big negative for jiu-jitsu in the sport of MMA nowadays. It's that mindset of, oh, we don't need to have good takedown defense. Once the fight hits the ground, we can operate from our back, and we can either A, get a submission off of our back, we can get a Kimura, we can get an armbar, we can get a guillotine, we can get a triangle choke, etc. Or B, we can reverse position from the bottom, we can get to top position, then work our way to a submission or really nice ground and pound from there. So contrary to popular belief, Diego Lopes has very good ground and pound, which is why I do want to see him offensively wrestle a little bit more in his fights. But again, the major fault of Diego Lopes was highlighted in this Movsar Evloev fight. Movsar Evloev was 4 for 7 on takedowns, and these takedowns really had very little resistance to them. And even in his victory last night, of course, he did get taken down, and it ended up being to Diego Lopes' advantage. But still, once he starts facing really high-level guys with extremely dominant top game positions, Diego Lopes is going to get very close to submitting these guys, but most likely he's not going to be able to submit them. He's going to lose a decision every time against a very dominant wrestler. So first and foremost for Diego Lopes, he has incredible jiu-jitsu, and his offensive striking is really nice, but I really want to see him work on his defense, not only his takedown defense, but overall his striking defense as well. As in that Movsar Evloev fight, he absorbed 88 significant strikes. This is a guy who does rely a bit on his toughness and his incredible chin to get it done, to march forward and be very offensively oriented. And while this does work in the majority of his fights, it is going to get him beaten by some of the better offensive and defensive oriented fighters in the UFC. He really does have good stylistic matchups against really aggressive guys who come out and are very offensively oriented, but guys who are more patient, guys who have very good defense. They are going to consistently beat Diego Lopes because of his lack of defense. But I do really like the athleticism and frame from Diego Lopes. So he is 5'11" at the 145-pound division. That is a very big guy. He really does remind me of an early career Charles Oliveira, who started off in the 145-pound division. Now I get it. He was significantly younger than Diego Lopes, but Diego Lopes is still a pretty young guy. He's only 28 years old. And just like Charles Oliveira early on in his career, he was insanely dangerous. He could beat some really high-level fighters, but but he was consistently losing to some of the better defensive-oriented guys. So he did have an opportunity before this Movsar Evloev fight. He did go on the Dana White Contender Series against Joe Anderson Brito, who I actually really like as well. He's 3-1 in the UFC. He looks really good. He's on a 3-fight win streak right now. But again, in this fight, Diego Lopes straight up was on his back the entire fight, as his takedown defense really is not great. But overall, I really do see his striking giving a lot of guys in the featherweight division problems. He's very powerful, and he's pretty orthodox in his strikes. Not only does he operate from the orthodox stance, but he's not going to be throwing out some insane stuff. His movement isn't insane in the octagon. I wouldn't call him plotty, but he's definitely efficient with his movement. He doesn't gas out, and a reason he doesn't gas out is because every single movement for Diego Lopes has a purpose. I would say on the feet, he is more of a boxer than a kickboxer, but he does have some nice kicks occasionally, and he actually looks really good in the clinch. He has some really nice clinch strikes, and he does like going to that knee consistently. So now that we dove into Diego Lopes, some of his strengths and weaknesses and tendencies, and kind of a synopsis of his career, to answer the question, what is his potential? Well, first and foremost, the 145-pound division is extremely tough. It's full of absolute killers. So when I look at guys like Arnold Allen, for example, guys like Ilya Topuria, it's going to be very tough for him to beat him. These guys are just so defensively sound and are so powerful in their strikes. They're consistently going to be able to land on Diego Lopes. But I do really see top 15 potential from Diego Lopes. Not only are there some guys that are very old at the top of 145, such as Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega, that are bound to get out of the division at some point, I also see him potentially being able to beat some of the older guard at 145. I really would not be surprised to see him beat a guy like Bruce Leroy, who I think Bruce Leroy more or less is kind of like Diego Lopes, but a slightly more defensively oriented and defensively sound guy, and a slightly less dangerous guy, not only in the striking realm, but in the grappling realm as well. Again, I do think that would be a cool matchup for Diego Lopes. And hell, I really would not be shocked to see him beat an elite guy like Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega is past his prime. I really don't see Brian Ortega being able to submit Diego Lopes. I think the grappling exchanges in this fight would be absolutely incredible. It would be very fun to see. And Brian Ortega, he has very underrated boxing. He's a good striker, but again, that finish ability on the feet absolutely is not there from Brian Ortega anymore. It is there from Diego Lopes. So again, I think he could potentially beat some guys in the top 15. If I had to give my official prediction, I think by the time Diego Lopes is 32, 33 years old, just like Bruce Leroy, I think he does crack the top 15, where I do think he could beat a couple guys within the top 15, but he's consistently going to lose against top 5 to top 8 guys in the division. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on Diego Lopes? Genuinely one of my favorite fighters to watch nowadays. I know he's only been in the UFC for 2 fights, but I rewatched a lot of his regional scene fights, and damn, is this guy so entertaining. So I'm a big Diego Lopes fan. I'm really going to be rooting for his success. If you listen till the end of the video, I really appreciate it. Smack that like and hit subscribe.